Good morning to everybody. I'd like to thank Evelyn for sponsoring Evelyn Clapp for sponsoring and dedicating the Dvar Torah Matot-Masei Le'ilui Nishmat her mother, Ita Bat Yitzchak. Her neshama of Ita Bat Yitzchak should have Aliyah Began Eden. We know always how important learning is for Evelyn. Always she and Marco involved in the shiurim of the shul, and so it's really befitting that this way of dedicating something to her mother should be via the vehicle of Limudat Torah. We all know about in Parshat Matot. We learn of the Jewish people going out and following the mitzvah of directive of Moshe. They were supposed to wage a war of revenge against the Midianites, who caused, through their seduction and subsequent to that, people of Israel involved in idolatry, and that in turn caused 24,000 people to die, very, very heavy losses. So Moshe had said that relaying the mitzvah of Hashem, that the Jewish people were supposed to wage a war of revenge, and that's in fact what they did. So 12,000 people of Israel, 1,000 each tribe, went out to war, and when at the end of the campaign, the victorious troops comes to the camp of Yisrael, and instead of being greeted with a Yeshar Koach from Moshe Rabbeinu gets very angry with them and castigates them. And the reason is because he says to him, look, you wiped out the men, and now you brought all the spoils of the war, and part of the spoils, in inverted commas, of the war were the women who you spared. And he says to the people, but wait a minute, who caused all this this failure amongst the Jewish people? Who caused this collapse in which 24,000 of people? It was Dafka, the woman, who seduced the men. So how could it be that the very obstacle and the cause of this calamity in Am Yisrael, how could you have spared them of all people? So afterwards, okay, they correct the women who were involved in the sin, they kill, and the other women who were not involved, they spare. The Shla Kadosh, the Shla was a very famous Rabbi Shua Horovitz, who was in Poland, after which he made Aliyah, and he made in the 16th century, 16th, 17th century, and what he did was he wrote this very famous commentary of Musar and Kabbalah, and he's buried, according to most people, in Tveria. B'kitzur, in his book called Shla, which stands for Shnei Luchot HaBrit, he poses the following question, and the question is, why did Moshe Rabbeinu get angry with the troops? He never told them, he never instructed them in any way that there is an Isur, a prohibition of sparing the woman who now caused the seduction to the Jewish people. He told the troops, go now and fight a war of revenge, destroy Midian, but he didn't tell them anything about that there's an Isur now of sparing the woman. So what the Shla says is, so what did he want? The Shla says something which we've spoken about on a couple of occasions from different angles, and which many Mefarshim, many thinkers said, and that is, there are things in Judaism that are so self-explanatory that you don't have to give a precise instruction, you don't have to clarify it. It's something which is so obvious that you should just work it out yourself. And that's what the Shla is saying. What Moshe Rabbeinu said, correct. He didn't say anything to the troops. He didn't say anything. He didn't tell them a clear-cut instruction not to spare the woman, because it was so obvious. All right, what caused over here this whole calamity? What caused this fall of the Jewish people in which so many people's lives were lost? It was the seduction of the woman. So wouldn't any person who's got a little bit of seichel in them understand that those very people who they are the obstacle, that you have to get rid of them? And this is a great yesod, this is a great foundation in which many Mefarshim say that all things which are so rational and logical that we're not coming to use this principle in order to denigrate from the Torah, but we're saying we're coming to use this principle in order to add on anything that now is so simple that a person can work it out themselves, and to understand this is the general way in which the Torah is going, that a person has to use that seichel, and the person then the Torah doesn't have to then address and say, give specific orders. It doesn't have to be written in the Shulchan Aruch because it's something which is so obvious. We'll just end off with two examples. One which is spoken about, one I saw in, but it's just like simple. In the book of Yechezkel, when the Nabi, he chastises Am Yisrael, and he compares them to Sdom. That particular generation of the destruction of the first temple, the kingdom of Judah and Israel, Judah and Shomron. So Yechezkel says, you people in Judah, you're worse than the people of Sdom. And then he says, and what was the sin of Sdom? The sin of Sdom is that they had no compassion on people who are poor, and that they didn't give any tzedakah. So the many mashgichim said, but where actually is it written in the 7 mitzvot Bnei Noach? Right? There's 7 basic mitzvot that all Gentiles are chayavim, they're all obligated in. We all know the 7 mitzvot Bnei Noach, and nowhere does it say in those mitzvot that that the Gentiles have to give tzedakah. If they want, they do. If they don't, they don't. It's not one of the mitzvot. So what is the Navi saying that Hashem destroyed Sdom because they didn't give tzedakah? Where's it written? So on that, the Mashgiach of Sabotka used to say, but that's exactly this example and principle that we're saying. It doesn't have to be said. Do you have to tell people? Do you have to tell a culture? Do you have to tell some civilization that there's an absolute need to give tzedakah? And that do you have to tell people that a nation that refuses to give tzedakah is like signing a death warrant? That's something that every single person with a bit of seichel, that it's so obvious that that's part of the human condition, that's what they have to do. It doesn't have to be written in the Shulchan Aruch that if someone gets up early to daven, it's a great mitzvah to daven at dawn. What we call in simple language in the Gemara, vatikin, right? With sunrise. So, do you have to sell? Does it have to be written in the Shulchan Aruch that someone who gets up at 5:30 in the morning to daven, that he mustn't shout out Shema Yisrael aloud and wake up the neighbors? Do you need the Shulchan Aruch to tell us such a thing? A person who gets up at 5:30 and he's davening close to the neighbors, so then you daven in a way that you don't now wake up the neighbors. You don't need the Shulchan Aruch to tell you such a simple thing. Al kol panim, and this is what I said in the title. That is a quote from the Ibn Ezra, and also in his introduction to his commentary to the Chumash. He says, remember, man's intellect is the angel which connects Hashem to a person, and therefore take care of that intellect. Watch now, take care of this angel that Hashem gave us. See to it that you don't fill it up with rubbish and nonsense. And use the seichel, this precious angel, which communicates between me and between Hashem, that we use it in order to understand what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants us to do. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Kol tov.